welcome to this edition of More Than Books, where we take a look at happenings in and around the Southfield Public Library.
Hello, I'm Mike Talley, host of the Author's Den, and I'm here to introduce another great program, More Than Books, that features happenings in and around the Southfield Public Library. On today's show, we're fortunate to have young adult author Sherry Winston with us. Her books are called President of the 5th and 6th Grades, and she gave an exciting presentation. She's very animated, and she had a great rapport with the audience. Shari Fesco, youth coordinator for the Southfield Public Library, is a big fan of Sherry Winston's, and she was eager to introduce and talk about her guest.
We were very happy to welcome Sherry Winston, author of President of the Whole 5th Grade and President of the Whole 6th Grade, originally from Muskegon, but visiting us here at the Southfield Public Library. Sherry's had 4 books published and 1 short story featured in a short story collection with other authors.
My name is Sherry Winston, and I am the author of President of the Whole 5th Grade and President of the Whole 6th Grade. And I'm so excited about those books. President of the Whole 6th Grade was just released on November 3rd. It was, its predecessor was President of the Whole 5th Grade. And it's a great story about a 10-year-old girl who wants to have a cupcake making empire, and she's decided that she's going to rule the world one cupcake shop at a time. And when she gets a chance to meet her idol, Miss Delicious, and finds out that Miss Delicious was once president of the whole 5th grade right at her elementary school, man, she can't wait. She's like, I gotta do it, I gotta be president. And so she gets ready for this campaign, and she thinks she has it all locked down. And then a new girl comes, and her name is Jasmine Moon. That's how she says it. And Jasmine wants the same thing. And Brianna is determined, you are not going to come to my school and take away my presidency. I'm going to be president. So that's President of the Whole 5th Grade. In the new book, she is also in a presidential role, but it's very different. In the 5th grade, she's trying to learn her way through an election and doing dirty tricks, trying to one-up her competitor and that kind of thing. In the 6th grade, kids don't tend to care that much about that sort of thing. So she actually gets appointed president, which is kind of a letdown, but she takes it because she doesn't mind doing what needs to be done. But then when they fall short of the money they need for their class trip, she's like, oh no, I will not be the first school president in 20 years to not take her 6th grade class. So she is determined to make this money. And one of the best things about President is that after all of the twists and turns that she goes through in order to get her class, try to get her class to Washington, D.C., she winds up making a real-life contribution to a real-life senator and being a part of a filibuster. And so it's a wonderful story that it's got cupcakes and recipes and, again, dirty tricks and popularity, but I sneak in a little American civics, and they learn about filibusters, and they learn about the importance of being involved in the process. And I think that for those reasons that it's not just a fun story, it's a great story about getting involved and about participating in the political process. So
please join with me in giving the fabulous Sherry Winston a warm welcome.
Wow. I'd like to just take you around with me everywhere. That was awesome. That was the most fun I've had all day. Okay, well, I think everyone here and possibly upstairs and outside, they know I'm Sherry Winston, and I am the author of President of the Whole 6th Grade, which just was released yesterday. and I'm very excited. I drove all the way, woohoo, yeah, I drove all the way up here from Orlando, Florida, just me and my dog. The dog's at the hotel, so, you know, if I'm running out afterward, it's not because I'm running away from you. I just have to go check on the dog.
Though Sherry has spent most of her adult life living in lovely, balmy Florida, when she thinks of her childhood, she thinks of wintry old Michigan where she grew up.
It means a lot to me to be able to come back to Michigan and to share with my roots where I began. And also, in the story, there is a make-believe neighborhood where the story takes place called Orchard Park. And it is modeled after Southfield, Oak Park, those kind of areas. More Oak Park, actually, than Southfield. And so that's why I spent the day doing book talks or student talks at the Oak Park schools. I'm hoping that, you know, if some of your students go to Southfield or in the area, that if things go well, that I can get invited back and, you know, get a chance to visit other schools and really meet with the students. This is the fun time for me. You know, when as an author, you spend all your, you spend some time talking about, oh, I have this great idea. I'm so excited. I can't wait to do this. And so that's the only time you get to like interact. And then once you actually start working on the story, you're spending a lot of time by yourself. You know, my kids come home from school and I'm hunched down at the computer like this and they're asking me questions. My youngest daughter has this down to a science. She knows when I'm on deadline and when I'm just like, okay, you know, every answer is monosyllabic, and she'll come by, you know, Mom, can I get $50? Mom, can I do, because she knows whatever it is, yeah. And then I come out of that fog, and, you know, she's wearing my clothes and got my boots on. What are you doing? You said I could. So, you know, deadlines that all, you know, you get pulled into it. But the fun part for me is like what I did today. I got a chance to go to Einstein Elementary. I got a chance to go to Pepper Elementary. And the fifth and sixth graders, I got a chance to have assemblies with them. Those guys are working on something called personal narratives. And so I got to discuss with them specific things that they can do to make their personal narrative stronger and to make it easier. And that's what I like to do. When I do school visits, I like to go and talk to the students about ways to make their writing easier and better. And, you know, I try to do things where they have little competitions and we have a lot of fun. So,
Sherry was raised by a single mother who highly encouraged her and told her to make the best of every opportunity she could find and to work through it and not give up. And she has followed that advice to the T.
A little bit about myself. I grew up in Muskegon. We all are familiar with the map. For those of you who are young and don't know where Muskegon is, Detroit's over on this side, and you drive all the way across on 96, and then you get over here to the shore. Muskegon is the place that it shows up anytime there's bad weather, because the streets could be dry in Detroit, but if it's snowing anywhere, it's snowing in Muskegon. It's probably snowing there today. I don't know. But so that's where I grew up. I grew up in what was considered impoverished, I guess. My parents divorced after at an early age for me, and my mom was a single mother. She was a cashier at Kmart. And it always sort of tickles me when I see these things on television where people are saying, oh, you know, so-and-so came from a broken home. And I remember I was getting ready to go to college and the counselor at school asking me if I felt disadvantaged because I was coming from a broken home. And I'm thinking, I was like, man, my home ain't broke. I didn't understand what he was talking about. You know, every opportunity is what you make of it. If you young people here, if you have challenges, you've got disadvantages, you've got things you have to work through, you know, your mom's not there, your dad lost his job, this, that, and the other, guess what? That's everybody in the world, everybody in the room. That's not something that should hold you back. That's something that you have to find a way to work through. That's what my mom did. You know, she didn't look at us every day and go, oh, I don't know how I'm going to feed y'all in this broken home. My mama got up, she put on her shoes, she put on her clothes, she went to work, she came back home. Sherry Denise, have you done that homework? Sherry Denise, where are you thinking about going to college? I'm like, Mom, I'm in the 8th grade. I haven't thought about college today. Well, you better get thinking about it because your time is running out. You know, this was my mama's speech. When you get 18, you got to go somewhere. You can't be up in here with me after you 18. Now, at first she really did have me thinking, when the clock ticked 18, that woman gonna put me out on the street. And you know, later on I learned she wasn't being that cold about it. But she wanted me to grow up to be strong enough to take care of myself, to be able to take what she has given me and take the next step. And so when I got to be that age, you know, I was ready. By the time my mother talked about college from such an early age, by the time I was a freshman in high school, I already thought I went to Michigan State. I was taking classes with Magic Johnson. I'm like, you know, are you sure I'm not there? Because we've been talking about it for so long. So before I go into any more of my craziness about my life and everything, I want to talk to you all about president of the whole 5th grade, and then we can talk about how it led to president of the whole 6th grade. So has anybody in here read president of the whole 5th grade? Anybody? A couple of you, okay. So for a few of you, you'll kind of get this, and so you can kind of play along, and then for everyone else, it'll be new. But basically, president of the whole 5th grade is about a young lady named Brianna Justice. And now Brianna Justice wants to grow up to be a cupcake-making millionaire. That's her thing, y'all. She wants to do it. So I like to tell people that the story that leads to this really all began in the 4th grade. So what happened in the 4th grade? Well, it's almost the end of the school year. Brianna is in her classroom. She's working with some of her friends, and they're at their table working, and they're chit-chatting, and her friends are like, ooh, girl, I got something to tell you. And then, oh, tell me what. And I was at the mall, and then this happened. And they got their 4th grade gossip going. They're gossiping. It's all good to them. And then there's an interruption. The principal's voice over the intercom, and the principal goes, may I have your attention? May I have your attention, please? Could all 4th grade classes please report to the cafeteria? We have a speaker. All 4th grade classes to the cafeteria. So Brianna is thinking, oh man, I don't want to go to that cafeteria. We trying to talk about important 4th grade business. And the teacher is like, oh, you know that thing that teachers do, that one finger. You know, I went to some schools when President of the whole 5th grade first came out, and I saw the teachers doing that, and I loved it. And I came home, and my kids was carrying on, and I said, and then then it didn't work, and so I had my whole hand up. My daughter came by and gave me the high five. I realized that didn't work at home, that was like teacher magic. I left that alone. So anyway, the teacher gets them all up. She gets them out into the hall, and they're playing, stop. The teacher is like, don't make me have to count again. So they're all in line and everything. Well, Brianna gets to the door of the cafeteria, and she peeks through the window. And then she sees somebody she recognizes, the speaker, and she's like, ooh, I've wanted to meet her forever. So now she's completely focused on getting in. She don't want to get in trouble. She don't want to get sent to the principal's office. She needs to see. And so her girlfriends are coming up, and they're just like, oh, and then Brianna's like, stop. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm going to pay attention. And her friends are just like, dang, what's wrong with Brianna? She tripping. And Brianna's like, I'm not trying to hear this. So they get inside and they sit down, and the friends are still talking, and Brianna's not trying to hear it. And she's sitting and she's like this because she wants to hear. Well, the speaker is a woman named Miss Delicious. And Miss Delicious has her own cooking show. And she is known all over the world for being a famous cook and a famous chef. And she sells lots of stuff, and Brianna wants to be just like her when she grows up. She watches her all the time on the cooking channel. So she is so excited. And Miss Delicious makes a statement that completely changes Brianna's life. She says, "Boys and girls, hello, I am Miss Delicious." And they say, "Hello, Miss Delicious." And she says, "I went to this very same school when I was growing up." And the kids are like, "Ooh, a famous person went here, ooh." And Miss Delicious goes, "If it were not for the skills and the values that I learned as president of the whole 5th grade, I don't think I could be what I am today." And so Brianna is like, "Oh, I've got to do it. I've got to be president of the whole 5th grade because I plan on being a cupcake making millionaire. I'm going to have my own show. I'm going to make cookbooks. I'm going to make lots of money. I'm going to be famous around the world. So I got to do it because that's how she did it." So from that point on in the 4th grade, she decides that's what she's going to do. That child is on a mission. Over the summer, she's making posters. She tells everybody. She tells the doctor. She tells the dog walker. She's at the dentist over the summer getting her checkup and getting her teeth cleaned. And the dentist is cleaning and she goes, "I got a hair that out of whole 5th grade." And the dentist is like, "Spit, please. You know, just please, somebody do something." So finally, she's in school. It's 5th grade time. Classes have started. You know, they're a month in, and finally her teacher comes to the class and says, "Okay, class, it is time for us to organize our elections. Each 5th grade class gets to pick 2 representatives, and then we're going to have an election with the whole school, and we're going to choose the president of the whole 5th grade instead of for just each classroom." So Brianna's hand is up, "Me, me, 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 me." And so she's like, "Oh, okay, Brianna Justice on the board." Then there's another boy in the classroom, one of those boys who knows he doesn't want to be president. He only wants to be disruptive and to aggravate Brianna. His name is Todd Hamilton. They call him Toady Todd. And so Toady Todd, because he's always doing that thing that boys do where they sound like they're croaking into their own hand, "Never mind." And you're just like, really? Did that start with the cave children? You're not tired of that yet? But each generation of boys thinks it's brand new and that they invented it in their own bedroom, whatever. So she puts his name on the board. And then that's, you know, the teacher says, "Okay, if nobody else," Miss Nutmeg says, "That's it, let's move on." Well, before they can move on, there's a knock at the classroom door. She goes over and opens it. "Yes, can I help you?" It's the assistant principal, and she's got a student with her. "Miss Nutmeg," the assistant principal got a hard time seeing. "Miss Nutmeg, is that you? I have a new student for your class." And Miss Nutmeg will say, "Well, come on, bring her in." And so in walks this girl, and she's very new, and she's got long curly hair, and it falls over one eye, and she comes in with the new girl walk. "I'm so shy, I can't look at anybody. I'm just going to do like this." But she does look at the board. And on the board, it says candidates for class president. So she looks at it and she goes, "Can my name go up there?" And the teacher, Miss Nutmeg, said, "You want to be class president?" And she said, "I've always wanted to be president." So she puts her name up there. Well, every child in that room, they head whip around to Brianna. Ooh, she want to be president. So Brianna, being Brianna, you know, she is kind of sassy, and she not about letting anybody think that they can hold her down. So Brianna's looking at them, and she's saying, "Why y'all looking at me?" But on the inside, she is like, oh, no, she didn't. She thinks she can come to my school and be president over my friends. I'm the president. She got it all wrong. So that is the setup to president of the whole 5th grade. And as you can imagine, the race comes down largely to Brianna and to Jasmine. The new girl's name is Jasmine Moon. And the story, even though I tried to have a lot of fun with it, there's a lot of hijinks and pranks, and you know, there's a character who meets under the bleachers and keeps his face covered up, and he's doling out political secrets to try to overthrow the other campaign. Well, I was a child of the 70s. I was present for Watergate, so forgive me. But so I just tried to have a lot of fun with the idea of playground politics. And I really think that one of the reasons that that book has been so successful, it was on, the President of the Whole Fifth Grade made it to the Florida's recommended reading list. Is called the Sunshine State Young Readers Award Program, and it's basically recommended reading for all third, fourth, and fifth graders in the state. It was a finalist for the Tennessee recommended reading list. Oh, it's terrible that there was another one in there that I can't even remember. But the one of the biggies to me was over this past summer, it was on the recommended reading list for the New York Public Library System. And so, you know, it's the story definitely has legs. And one of the reasons I think it's so popular is that even though it's got the pink script, and you know, I always wanted, you know, I had friends who kept writing these girly books, and you know, I'm kind of girly, and I wanted a girly book, but it really isn't. It's not a girly story. I've had a lot of boys who, when I go to schools, you know, I might have 55% girls, but 45% boys in the line, and I always ask them, you know, what do you like about this book? And it's because Brianna's not a girly girl. She's not afraid to get in a foot race to show a boy that she's better than him. She plays basketball, and it's very much about competition and one-upmanship. And if I've learned anything, having a 10-year-old who's now a 15-year-old nephew living in my house, is that boys like one-upmanship. You know, if anything you can do, I can do better. That is the emblem that's tattooed, I think, on every boy's spine. Is just the competition that is just in there. And Brianna's that way too. She's not going to shy away from a good fight. And what I did with the story was, in President of the Whole Sixth Grade, I had to change some things, obviously, because there's a big shift, especially if you leave one school and you go to, like all the schools I visited here, they're actually K through 6. But Brianna, at sixth grade, she leaves and goes to fictitious Blueberry Hills Middle School. I don't know why I was channeling Fats Domino. I don't know how he got into I really don't know. But I wanted a name that if kids are reading it, they'll look at it and they'd have to remember it, because who could forget Blueberry Hills Middle? So that was where that came from. And what was important to me for the sixth grade book was to show that even though Brianna is trying to stay the same, she can't help but to start to change. Now, let me ask, are there any fifth graders here? Any fifth graders? You're a fifth grader? What about sixth graders? Are there any? Oh, there's several sixth graders. Okay, so for sixth graders, one of the things I tried to convey in the sixth grade book is that, like, you had these friends over the summer, you've had these friends all your life, and y'all are in the fifth grade, and everything, you know, you wanted to ride horses, you wanted to do this, you wanted to do that, and then you get into middle school and you're in the sixth grade, and all of a sudden they're too mature. They don't want to do it anymore. They're thinking about boys, and they're giggling, and they're trying on clothes, and they want to be popular. When my daughter is 16, I keep forgetting she just had a birthday. She is 16, and she would die if she knew I told, so y'all better not tell. But when she was little, she couldn't say popular. She'd say poplar. Mama, when I get to high school, I'm going to be popular. I said, you are? You mean like the tree? Huh? She never did get that joke. But, you know, so one of the things that Brianna faces is that now that she's in sixth grade, instead of having this big, elaborate election, she basically just gets appointed class president. And she thinks it's because she's one of the few kids who the advisor doesn't fear will set a fire in the trash can, you know. She's just so driven, though, and she wants to make things work. Well, she gets in there and she finds out that their fund for the class trip to Washington, D.C. is $2,500 short. And now she's got to help raise this money or fear being one of the first classes, sixth grade classes in 20 years not to go. So that kind of sets us on our journey. But one of the things that I really loved about this book is that it goes along, and that's the goal, and then the goal sort of shifts. And I get to talk to kids about a lot of different things. Like Brianna has a notebook in this story, in President of the Whole sixth grade, that she has to keep, where her teacher wants her to compare middle school life to ancient Rome, because they're studying ancient Rome as a way of learning democratic government and its origins. And so at first it might seem like something really bizarre, like why would you put those two things together? You guys have no idea how much I know now about ancient Rome. A lot. I'm sure that is my phone, that is my ringtone, so forgive me for not remembering to turn my phone off for my own talk, but I will go on. That's one of the cool things about the book. Now, both books, this is the coolest thing, the best thing that I think came out of it, was that for both books contain recipes. May I see your book? Thank you. Yeah, both. You know, she wants to be president of the whole sixth grade. I mean, she wants to be a famous cupcake baker. So I felt like, you know, she ought to have some recipes in here. So she's got her election notebook, but she's got recipes too. And I test drove the recipes. At the time when I first started this book, my oldest daughter was 9, and I think she was maybe 11. I got really sick and I had to leave my job at the newspaper. I have something called lupus. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but when it first really got on top of me, I was working as a full-time newspaper columnist in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And, oh, you see it? Okay, here, because I couldn't find it. Thank you, baby. And I got so sick, I had to leave my job. And so I also stopped working on the book. And then maybe a year later, I was able to finish it. So I'm not positive, but I think it finally came out in 2010 or 2011. But initially, when I'd started working on it, I'd had my daughter do those recipes. Like I created these recipes and I had her work on them in order to make sure that if a parent bought the book for their kid, that they would be able to do the recipes. And they, you know, I've heard from kids and parents that they have been. A lot of the recipes just use box mix, and you make this frostings from scratch, and some of them you include different things like fruits or chopped apples. But let's see, this one right here, Brianna's cookbook, oh, it's for the chocolate frosting. And I'll tell you two things. If you make the cream cheese frosting, I think the book says a cup of milk. Please don't put a cup of milk. It's more like a quarter cup of milk. And if you make this chocolate one, keep in mind that when you use an extra dry ingredient like the cocoa powder, you're going to use cocoa powder and confectioner sugar. You might need a little bit more milk, but you still probably don't need the cup, I think. Oh no, in here I say a half a cup of regular milk. I don't even think you need that much. It's more like a quarter. Thank you. But that chocolate frosting right there, it tastes exactly like chocolate ice cream. So if you get a chance to make that and you like chocolate ice cream, it's really cool. You know, in Florida, I've done this writing festival called April is for Authors. It's a really cool festival. And one year I did a frosting demonstration, and I got all of these cupcakes and I let people come up and frost their own cupcake afterward. It was a lot of fun, but it was messy, you know traveling with a bowl, and you got to make sure you can keep that butter and cream cheese. So I don't do that often, but I have done frosting demonstrations. So anyway, that is the story of President of the whole fifth grade. That is the story of President of the whole sixth grade, which, as I said, was just released. My next book is called The Sweetest Sound. It comes out next year this time. It's about a little 10-year-old girl who lives with her dad and her stepbrother, And she's, even though her mother has left them 3 years ago, she's still struggling with that abandonment, sort of. And she's very quiet, and people call her Mouse, and that's like her nickname, and she hates it. But she's one of those kids who she doesn't vocalize her needs. She doesn't say, like Brianna Justice, if somebody was calling her a nickname she didn't like, she'd be like, don't be calling me that name. I don't want to be called no Mouse. But in the young lady in The Sweetest Sound is very different. She's very quiet. She's just a very different kind of child. And it was a very different kind of book for me to write. So I'm looking forward to it coming out. It's about a gospel choir and her discovering that she has this amazing voice. Well, she actually knows she has an amazing voice, but she ultimately starts to actually share it. So I'm hoping next year, if I get to come back here for that book, that I'll have a little choral ensemble with me. And, if they know what's good for them, they won't let me sing. But, that doesn't mean I won't try.
One of the great things about Sherry's president of the whole fifth grade and president of the whole sixth grade is that she's much more about the empowerment message of girls being able to do things, and she doesn't focus on the fact that her main character is African American, but rather the fact that she is a female in today's world and she's not letting anything stop her.
So that, that's me, and that's the two books. And what I'd like to do now is to give you guys a chance to ask me questions. So I see someone here has her hand up. Hi there.
Hi. Are you planning on having like a president of the whole seventh grade?
Someone asked me that, and it's the fact that president of the whole sixth grade. This is it's funny now because the book is out, but not so funny at the time. So what happened was, I told you, I wrote president of the whole fifth grade, and then I got sick, and it took a little while for it to come out, and it finally comes out, and I was really happy with it, and the publishers were really happy with it. I think it sold pretty well in hardback, but it didn't fly off the shelves. So when I pitched the idea to do a president of the whole sixth grade, it got turned down. So they said, but we need someone like you who's doing realistic fiction, because I think everybody in the world who wants to write for this age group is writing about magic, and I tried, I just can't do it there. I don't have that much magic in me. Or vampires, magic, vampires, all of that kind of stuff. That's just not me. So they needed someone to write those kind of books. So they were very encouraging. Try something else, and let's see. So I spent 6 months working on this outline for this book, for a different book. And I go to them in June. I send it to them in June of 2013, and I say, well, how about this book? And my editor calls me back, and she says sheepishly, well, no one had anything negative to say about this book. It's pretty good, but everybody wanted to know, when are we going to do a sequel on president of the whole fifth grade? What? Are you kidding me? They wanted to know if you were willing to do one on president of the whole sixth grade. And I was like, certainly, I have it right here. I didn't have anything. They said, well, do you think you can get it to us in like the next 2 or 3 weeks? Yeah, certainly. I hadn't written a thing. Don't ever tell that. I don't want to see that blogged. But I hadn't. That's not true. Initially, when I made the pitch, I had. But, 6 months, I spent 6 months working on this other idea. So I had to go back, and I'm going through computer files, and I'm trying to find just dredges of that idea. I pull it all together, I put something on paper, and, I sold it in about a 4-week period between them turning down the other idea and asking for something new. And then me just making up something on the spot, like Big Fat Liar, like that kid. I was able to sell this book. So once they bought it, we had a dialogue about doing future books. And what they wanted me to think about was that, Once you start getting up to 7th and 8th grade, your market kind of changed. Like when you guys get a little bit older, like my daughter, by the time she was in 7th, 8th grade, she was reading those Twilight books. I hated it. That was something I was firmly against, but my sister read them, and I just said, you know, she's reading, and, you know, that's how I justified it. But anyway, to answer your question, if I do another Breonna Justice book, she'll be still in the 6th grade. More questions? Please have more questions. There you go, right there.
Why did you start writing children's books?
I started writing children's books largely because, as the person who introduced me said, I was a kid who was in a, you know, lived in a house, not a rich house, not a fancy house, but I had a house. I had grandparents. We had grass. We had normal, everyday kind of things. But I felt like all the books that had brown-skinned people like me in them were either about slavery or drugs or living in the ghetto, wherever that infamous place might be. Just they weren't about little girls who went to gymnastics and wanted to make friends and didn't know how. You know what I mean? They just weren't about that. And so I complained about it to my mom, and my mom said, well, you know, if that's the kind of story you want to read, then you need to write it. And I felt like, you know, so she trying to get smart with me like I can't? Oh, you think I can't? Oh, I'm going to write me a story. And so, you know, I'm sure my mom was just laughing into her house robe, but she made me think like, you know, like this was the push and the push back. I was a rebel. I was going to write me a book. So, you know, I know she's somewhere now in heaven laughing her head off at, you thought you were being a real cut up. This was how you rebelled against the nation, against the family.
Two of Sherry's most commonly asked questions are, will there be a president of the whole 7th grade? And is there a movie in your future? Here's what she has to say.
Oh, I would love to do a movie. The kids always ask me, you know, is your book going to be a movie? I have no control over it. I do know at some point, maybe last year, someone contacted me and then my agent about doing something with President of the whole 5th grade. But my agent told me that the money that they were offering wasn't worth the effort. I've always wanted to write for children, wanted to do TV programming for children, but I like animated. I'm going to ask you, how many of you in here have heard of this little show on PBS called Pig plus Cat? Okay, I love Pig plus Cat, and I don't have any little children in my house. Peg is a little girl who solves problems. And the episodes are 15 minutes long, so in a half hour you get 2 episodes. And at some point she turns to Cat and goes, Cat, you know what this means? We have a really big problem. Dun, 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 and that's the music. And what I love is that she identifies the problem and she works out a solution. And I'm like, go on, girl. You know, she don't just go and lay down. She don't go in and cry. She don't get like Caillou, who gets all confused and go crying to his daddy. You know, I'm like, let Caillou go on and cry to his daddy. Pig said, I'm going to work this out. Me and Cat going to make this happen. And they make it happen. And I love that. And I love telling stories about young people, especially young women, who have that attitude, who don't just quit every time something gets hard, but they say, you know, we have a really big problem. And this is what I'm going to do to fix it, because I'm not going to let this problem stop me. So, you know, now you all know my dirty little secret. When I'm feeling down or I need some motivation to work on kid stories, I'm at home watching Pig plus Cat now, you know, just... That's the truth. So my daughter, you know, I was like my mom, I was a single working mom, but my brother who had retired from the Air Force, he came to stay with us. So when I would have to go do things after work hours or whatever, he would help take care of the child. But, you know, so one day I'm there with her, and she has put on one of my sweaters and belted it like a blazer. and she has a old cell phone that doesn't work anymore, and she has it squeezed right here, and she has her stroller. She's got her doll in the stroller, and she's walking with the doll in the stroller and the cell phone on it. She's got a pocketbook, a purse tucked under here, and she's walking by me and my brother, and she's talking into the phone that's disconnected. It's connected to no one, and she's saying, well, somebody got to keep this baby because I got to go to work. And I was like, dang, why you gonna throw me under the bus like that? I've never, ever done that to you. And she was just like, Mom, are you gonna baby? You said you were gonna babysit. She just, she won't break character. Are you gonna keep this baby because I gotta go to work tonight? I'm looking at my brother like, make her stop. I don't sound like that. Make her stop. So, of course, now my daughter is 18, and she, I tell stories like that, and she goes, I was cool even when I was 4. So she thinks it was hilarious, but I understand about moms. Sometimes moms have to have phone. They got things they have to do, plans they need to make. That's just how it goes.
As a single mother of one daughter, Sherry's very conscious of the message that she's sending to her audience, her readers, and she's very, very encouraging of young writers, telling them to find material in their own lives and make it personal.
One of the things I like to tell all my young writers is, don't get hung up trying to make the big picture. What I talked to the children today about the personal narratives, but this is true of all kinds of writing, is when you start out, think about shrinking the subject. So let's say you right here. Do you have an after-school activity, something that you do? Do you do gymnastics or cheerleading, or you do sports? What kind of sports do you do? You do soccer. Okay, let's say that you're going to write a story and your main character is a soccer player. And so at first that just, there's so many different ways you can tell it. What I like to tell the young writers is the first thing you should do after you know what your subject is to decide on the genre. Who in here knows what a genre is? You knows what that means. What's genre? It's like the type of a story. And a genre could mean that the story is fiction or nonfiction or humorous or mystery or scientific, or, it's a different ways you want to tell the story. So for my soccer story, do you think that would be an adventure story, an action story, a funny story? What's something you action, okay? It could be an action story. Once you decide what type of story you want to tell, it makes it a lot easier for you to start to get past that blank page and to start telling your story. Yes, dear? Yes, that's very good. You've got a great writing teacher. You tell your teacher I said, good job. You need to come up with your conflict. So if you are telling a story about soccer and you want your story to have action in it, and you want to come up with a good conflict, what's a potential good conflict for a story about a girl who plays soccer, and that you want the story to have action in it? Her team is bad, okay? That could be a good form of conflict. Or what if her best friend is better? What if, as hard as she tries, her best friend is better, and she's more competing with her best friend than with the other team? And so they get so caught up in their own rivalry that it's bad for the team they're playing for. See, bam, I just made that up. I think I'm gonna write a book about soccer. No, just kidding. But that's just how the process goes. And if you've got, you guys are friends, pop those ideas off with one another, bounce them back and forth. Especially if you're writing on things after school.
Though she's devoted herself to writing children's books now, Sherry started out as a journalist in Florida for over 20 years.
Did you go to school for literature?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. No, because my mother told me that I would starve and I needed to be able to have a real job. So I went to school for journalism. So I merely almost starved. No, but I kid. No, I was a journalist for, I don't know, 20-something years. And, until I got sick and I had to quit. But it served me well. I earned a good salary, and I was a columnist, so I got to set my own hours, choose my own topics. I really did have the best job at the newspaper. But I will say that the great thing about being a journalist before I became a book writer is that, one, you can't really insult me, because when you have been a columnist for a daily newspaper, people will send you letters that say anything. Oh, you changed the picture. This was like senior citizens would send me this. I'm a woman in my 80s, and even I can afford to get my hair done. You don't like my hair? You don't have to read it then. But people would say anything. Oh, you don't look nearly as fat in person as you do in your picture. And they weren't trying to be mean. So I tell people this because like at the publishing company, when they have like bad news to deliver, they're like tiptoeing around it. And I'm just like, dude, I worked for a newspaper for 20-something years. You really can't, unless you're just saying something really foul or you bring my mama into it, you can't hurt my feelings, because that's just how that business was. So no, I didn't major in literature. I majored in journalism. It also taught me the respect of deadlines. When with this book, with President of the Whole Sixth Grade, I had gotten to was working on the final draft. And 2 weeks before I was supposed to send it in, the hard drive on my MacBook crashed, and I lost the whole thing. I was in Starbucks finishing, and I looked at the screen and I couldn't pull it back up. And somebody across the table from me said, "Ma'am, are you okay?" The color just drained out of my face. I couldn't believe it. And I freaked out, but I was not going to call my editor after all that work and say, I don't have the book, because my computer crashed and I was too dumb to email it to myself, like so many friends have told me to do time and time again. So I allowed myself to cry and weep on the way home, and I got up the next morning and I had to rewrite that book in 2 weeks. So the book that you see, if any of you who have the copy of sixth grade, the book that you see is slightly different than the book I originally wrote because I wrote it on the fly. I had to. I just had to. So, any other questions? Yes?
Growing up in Muskegon, what's the connection between Oak Park?
Even though I've lived in Florida for a long time, I find that, thank you very much, thank you. I find that when I am getting into my child mind to try and create characters and whatnot, it puts me back in Michigan. And I wrote a book where I made up a town, I had a fictitious town that was based on Muskegon. So I knew I wanted it to be in Michigan, but I didn't want it to be in Muskegon. So initially I was going to have it in Detroit. Well, I did some research on the schools, and I've had a hard time almost all the public schools in Detroit seem to be charter schools. I've had a hard time finding the information that I wanted or needed in order to create this make-believe school environment. So I said, well, I won't say it's in the city of Detroit. I'll say it's in a suburb, and I'll just make it up. And then that way, I'm sort of covered. So that's how it came about initially. And then later, I started just looking up places that are close to Detroit. So I looked at like Southfield, and isn't there a Royal Oak? Yeah, and then Oak Park. And so the Orchard Park that I write about in the book is sort of like an amalgam of those three. Initially, I thought it was more of Southfield, but Southfield is actually a pretty big city, for a suburb. So I wanted it to have a little bit more of a small town feel, and that's how Oak Park came to be.
Sherry is a wonderfully eclectic woman, enjoying baking and, of course, writing, drawing, and so many other interests. And she encourages young people to do the same and explore all the possibilities that are available to them.
I am a baker, but I just bake for my family. I bake for, my youngest daughter is always a willing taster when I go into the kitchen. Right now, her favorite cupcake, I made a lemon cupcake that tastes just like the Girl Scout lemon cookie. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay, she's the last one, I promise.
How many books did you make?
I've got 4 books published, and I had 1 short story published. So, I've been trying to write books since I was you all's age. I had notebooks and notebooks. When my mom passed away and I had to go clean up her stuff, I found this trunk that was full of all the books. Like, she used to have an old-fashioned typewriter. She taught me how to type on it. And I had all these, I was so young that I didn't know how to make quotation marks. I put the quotes in parentheses. So I have a lot of books that I've tried to write, but I've only had 4 that's been published. So for you young writers, I encourage you to keep on writing. It's good to talk about your ideas, but nothing means nothing until you start putting it on that paper. So get it on paper and tell your stories, because there could be a little girl out there like the little girl I used to be who's just waiting for that story to connect to. So thank you.
One of the greatest things about president of the whole 5th grade and president of the whole 6th grade is that they can be used in so many different ways in the classroom, including teaching about the upcoming election, teaching about how girls can really do anything, including be involved in politics, run their own business, etc. So I highly encourage both books, President of the 5th grade, whole 5th grade, and President of the whole 6th grade, be used in your classroom.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this special edition of More Than Books. If you'd like to see other programs, consult Southfield Multimedia and Cable 15's Facebook and YouTube pages. You might also enjoy episodes of The Author's Den. Again, go to the YouTube and Facebook pages for Southfield Multimedia or Cable 15. Thanks for watching.